and I'm interviewing. I'm talking to Cara Spencer, one of the candidates for mayor for MetroSTL.com, and just want to ask you if you could tell me a little bit about yourself and how you first were elected.
Sure, Jim. Well, as you may know, I am a single mom. I have a 9-year-old son, and I'm a native St. Louis, and I've lived here my whole life. I was born down here in South St. Louis. Went to school. I'm the first in my family to get a college degree. I studied mathematics, and I bought my first house here in St. Louis, actually north of Del Mar, and now live in South St. Louis and along the riverfront. And I
Okay.
see. I see our community as one that has a phenomenal history and a phenomenal future. We have some rocky roads ahead. I mean, we have some real challenges facing our city and our region right now. I ran for alderman the first time in 2015. I saw that our neighborhood rec center pool had been closed by the city. This was an amenity that many of our families rely on as one of their only sources of fun and healthy activity in the summers. And when it was closed by the city, there was no communication, there was no plan to reopen it. And I thought, what a waste. We have this phenomenal asset, and here it is, just, a giant gaping hole in our neighborhood. So I decided to run for alderman. And it was a 3-way race. I was running against an incumbent who had been in office for 20 years. And the pundits said it looked impossible, but I did win, obviously. And I got right to work on that pool. I got it open running and by the summer. And, I look at that as a way in which we can reorient our priorities as a city towards what our citizens want and need. And it was that experience that really kind of shaped my first year at the board, being willing to dig in and work very hard and be relentlessly supporting the issues our communities want. We can really drive successful results. And so I decided to run for mayor. First and foremost, because I love St. Louis and I believe in us. I think we've got tremendous opportunities ahead, but we have got to change course. Those in the elected leadership of St. Louis, we've got to have a new direction. We have an archaic form of government, same old way of doing business, and it frankly hasn't been working, Jim. So I'm running to serve as our next mayor to forge a new path for St. Louis, one that is hopeful, one that's constructive, and one that can bring our region out of the stagnant economy, the underlying regional stagnation that has plagued us for decades.
So, why are you the best candidate?
It's important that the next mayor be a person who's willing to sit down with any and everybody, whether they agree or not. And I'm a true consensus builder, and you can see that by my track record at the Board of Aldermen. I have been able to get an enormous amount of legislative issues through, and that's very important. We need a mayor who will, no matter what, sit down with folks with whom they disagree. And we're going to have to build partnerships with St. Louis County, the surrounding region, and the state of Missouri, not just one or two elected officials, but with everyone. And I have a track record of being able to do that. I think in some ways there are constituencies for whom they have an ideal candidate, but I would argue that the ideal candidate for any one constituency is not the ideal candidate for the region. And I bring a consensus building foundation, one that has a large success rate of getting things through the policy making body of city government, and a relentless dogged determination to do the real work, the real hard work of helping to turn the neighborhoods I currently represent around and the city as a whole.
Okay, so I guess this is a different kind of campaign for you, and nothing, usually the ones that you really love is the ones in a crowded room where everybody's together, and you're up there and you're just getting into it. How has it been different?
Jim, you're so right. It's been so different because I truly love getting, being in person with people, meeting people where they are, being in the room and feeling the energy and being able to really connect with people. And that's been impossible because of COVID. And then certainly the weather this winter, these last few weeks have been so cold. So even with socially distanced door knocking, it's just been impossible to do. So that's been hard on the campaign. It's been hard on me personally. But on the flip side, we have been engaging so constructively with Zoom, just like we are here today on the phones. And we are taking on new ways of communication, radio, TV, and exploring those other options. So it's been fun and certainly has been a challenge, but you're right. I think, if I had my druthers, I would be out in person talking with people, shaking hands and meeting people where they are.
Okay. Now, your greatest accomplishments on the Board of Aldermen, of course, we have to talk about the airport.
Great.
So tell me about the airport and your other big accomplishments.
Sure. Well, the airport is, as you know, the city's largest single physical asset. And as such, there was a proposal to privatize it, to utilize a federal program that allows cities or public airports to fully privatize. This is something that has only been done one other time on mainland United States, up in upstate New York. And boy, it was an abject failure. That project cost those local taxpayers $78 million just to regain control of the asset. I was very worried about the process through which we were considering the privatization of that airport. And without public dialogue, transparency, without a elected body that is really communicating effectively to the general public, building trust, you can't do big projects. And we didn't see that here. And I was very skeptical of the process of privatization, as well we should be. And I fought like heck to make sure that we did not go down that dangerous path. And, that really sets me apart from the other front runners in this race, and that one of the others was really pushing that project through. I didn't just stand on the right side of that issue, Jim. I worked tirelessly to make sure that the public was informed and that we had general consensus where we needed to be on the issue.
Okay, most of the rest of this is just about your position on various things. Let's talk about police. And I have reducing crime, cure violence, equity in the police department, and anything else you could say about, crime.
Sure. Well, violence is clearly the number one issue facing our city, and crime in general, but particularly violence, disproportionately communities of lower income, communities of color, and has been one of the issues pushing our families out, in particular of North St. Louis. And this is unacceptable. We have got to get serious about addressing violence. So that's why over the last year, I've been working with national experts who have been effective at dealing with violence in other cities. And it's important to note here, Jim, that St. Louis has been sticking out like a sore thumb on this issue. There are cities throughout the nation who've been very successful at dealing with violence. And if elected mayor, I'm going to bring those folks to St. Louis to help us rewire our public safety system to be more effective, to get in line with national best standards, and be effective at addressing violence in our communities. This has to be rooted in trust. You mentioned the distrust in our community with our police department, and we have got to get serious about healing that divide. If elected mayor, I have an unwavering commitment to healing the divide between our community and our police. And I cannot stress the importance of this posture enough. If we are not willing to fully engage in this very messy and very, very complicated set of conversations, we're not going to move the needle, and we're going to continue to see violence throughout the city of St. Louis. So I'm committed to doing just that, healing that divide and having some very, very complicated and very hard, frankly, conversations with both our community and our police at the same table.
So, okay, tax subsidies like TIFs and abatements.
Mm-hmm. What about them?
Well, what about it? Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
look,
I guess they're supposed to be necessary, or necessary, very much of an evil. But would you have any changes in them, or
yes, I mean, look, tax subsidies are an important piece here. We have to recognize that they play a role. The cost of rehabbing a building often doesn't match what you can sell it for in the open market. That's the result of a depressed economic system. The underlying economy here is grossly underperforming. So in order to build that up, we have to use subsidies sometimes. But it's important, Jim, that we are very judicious in that. We have a limited pie, and if we're carving that out and giving deals to developers, we've got to be very, very judicious. That's why, as an alderman, I have been pushing back, fighting back. In my experience serving on both the Neighborhood Development and HUD's committee, overseeing all those development deals, I am uniquely positioned with the experience to understand those systems very well, understand how to reform it in a way that can better perform for our community.
okay, the workhouse?
Yes.
Uh, what do you think of? Do you think that they're dragging their feet on closing it, or?
Look, I think that, yes, I mean, I have been committed to closing the workhouse, and I remain committed to closing the workhouse. This is an issue that needs to be addressed. We are unusual as a city to have not one, but two incarceration facilities, and that needs to be rectified. And the activist community and the community at large has identified that there are issues at the workhouse that frankly, we need to address. The recent events at the CJC are cause for real alarm and real concern, Jim. The fact that our doors don't lock is just, it's heartbreaking. That breach of trust that we should have with both the folks in our custody and the people that we employ to work at those incarceration facilities should have a reasonable expectation of safety while there. And we broke that trust by failing to have locks on the doors. I'm horrified to learn that. So clearly that is an indicator that there are widespread issues, and it is going to require some real digging in and leaning into the folks who work there, who run those facilities, and the folks that are housed there, that are temporarily residents in our custody. So if elected mayor, I am fully committed to digging into that question, that issue, and rectifying it. We have to put the public safety first. And we have to put the safety of those who are in our custody and employees of the city at the top of that priority list.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about racial equity, bridging the Delmar divide, all the things having to do with the racial divide in the city. What can you do to bring both sides together?
Sure. Healing this divide is, I would argue, one of the most important things that the next mayor does. And I think the divisions there are not only hurting people and reducing the quality of life and the length of life in our residents, many of whom there's such a disparity in the health outcomes of our community members. We've got to get serious about that. To that end, as an alderman, I have been already taking constructive steps to start to address some of that. Reining in the payday lending industry, recognizing the biggest disparity in health outcomes was in asthma in the ER. I went and passed a bill to start to regulate the air contamination in our neighborhoods. And these are steps, they're not enough, but they show my commitment to these issues. And if elected mayor, I will have the capacity and the tools to take those baby steps a step further, a much bigger step further, to really rectify that. It's important that the next mayor hold themselves, the administration, accountable for real metrics and breaking down the very different lived experience that our residents have north and south of Delmar. And if elected mayor, I am committed to doing just that.
The last question, anything else?
What?
Anything else?
Oh, No, Jim, I mean, look, I think that I am really, truly bullish on St. Louis. We have unprecedented opportunity ahead. We are going to see the federal government investing in cities like we haven't seen in decades. This is an incredible opportunity, but we've also got some real challenges. We know that our budget is going to be decimated by a lack of income following COVID. So we have got to be very serious about the investments that we're going to be getting from the federal government and making those investments in such a way that is going to return for the longevity of St. Louis. And I have a track record of, like I said, digging in deep and going the extra mile, Jem, and making sure that at the heart of my decisions as an elected official, I put the citizens first, not special interests. It's time we kick special interests right out of City Hall and get our city up and moving in a positive trajectory. And I am committed to doing that. And I have the track record that I can lean into to do that. Thanks
Uh,
for.
yeah, well, thank you. If you're, you go through the first round and go to the second round, we'll hope to have you back. And thank you for your time.